As I came down the driveway in the car, I found him spreading gasoline at the base of the house.
He ran into the street, pushed an officer down, and they had to taser him to subdue him and bring him into the hospital.
Without medication, he would become highly psychotic and paranoid and bust down walls, scare the neighbors.
He believed that a neighbor named Doug had taken over his brain and was making him do different things.
Our family just practically was drowning. We were sleeping with our doors locked at night.
My house would have gone up in flames, and anybody inside it would have been killed. No parent plans to have a child with a serious mental illness. Today, over 200,000 Arizonans live with serious mental illness, more than 40 million individuals nationwide. Most are adequately served by the public behavioral health system administered by our statewide Medicaid system, commonly known as Access. But many of those with the most serious mental illnesses live on our streets and in and out of our jails and prisons, primarily because of a lack of appropriate housing. They are not safe. They lead lives filled with misery, fear, and danger because our current system is not able to meet their special housing needs. This is a film about these people and their families.
As a private mental health attorney, families come to see us to get help in arranging a system to provide for a disabled family member. Among the things we've learned is the critical importance of stable housing. It's absolutely impossible to recover from any disability in the absence of a stable and secure housing environment.
My name's Charles Goldstein. I'm an emergency physician. I have a son with serious mental illness. My wife and I first became aware of the fact that he had behavioral issues back when he was about 5 years old, was having trouble in school. And from that point on, we've gone through a revolving door of inadequate psychiatric treatment provided by the private industry, by public resources, and have spent much of his life and our lives wrestling with trying to get proper treatment for him, and especially appropriate housing for him.
Our son Mike was born in 1978. He's 40 years old. He had difficulty from his early childhood. In his early 20s, we decided he can't live at home anymore. Other family members locked their doors at night. They were afraid of him. In his late 20s and most of his 30s, Mike went through various residential treatment programs. He was kicked out of every one of them because of his illness. He's more severe than most, and most providers of care want the least sick people to care for. This recycling went on for many years.
My name is Deborah, and I have 4 grown adult sons. Our third son, around the age of 14, started displaying what we thought was just your very strong-willed, typical teenage boy rebellion. But it continued to escalate and get out of control, and we availed ourselves to every kind of resource that we could think of. By the age of 18, he had his first psychotic break, and he would stay up all hours of the night. My husband slept downstairs, I slept upstairs, with the thought if something happened to one of us, then the other one could possibly get away and explain what happened. He was running through the neighborhood and scaring the neighbors, knocking on their doors. He was singing songs, and he was jumping on cars, and we knew it was time to call the police. But I called the next morning to check on my son at the urgent care center, and I was met with this wonderful greeting. The gentleman said, "Ma'am, your son is a psychopath. Give him the number to a homeless shelter and pack his bags." But because of the barriers with HIPAA, they don't include the parents, they don't try to ascertain information, and so that really hinders getting the best care when it's needed in the beginning. Because he's living in a Mark Community Resource Home that's similar to the Lighthouse model, they're working with him, and They've been very flexible with his need. Because of that, he hasn't been in the hospital for the past 4 years. And for the first time in his life, he has a job. I never thought my son would ever work, ever again. And so he's got a shot. And if I was not able to be a full-time advocate for my son, I have no doubt that he would be living in the streets right now, or in jail, or in prison, or dead.
It wasn't until after he came out and he went into one of the lighthouse models that he was able to stay out, and now thus shifting the burden of cost to Medicaid, because they pay for the outpatient treatment, so the state's saving money. So I think overall we need to have more of the lighthouse model, which represents a residential setting without the treatment component of losing your lease. So these are leased houses and homes, and the only part that isn't covered is the housing subsidy or assistance, which can be $15,000 to $20,000 a year for a home of 4 to 5 individuals. So that really isn't a lot of money. The services are covered Medicaid services. So we believe that this is better, and it would relieve some of the inpatient problems we're having where people can't be discharged because there isn't a safe environment for them to be discharged to. While the majority of people with serious mental illness are victims, there is a small component of people with serious mental illness with untreated psychosis. That means they're not getting treatment. That can become dangerous. And I don't think we have to wait until these individuals commit a crime. We know that it's the right thing to do. So this is a perfect model, and it's actually more cost effective.
The model has extensive research showing that it reduces the amount of expensive institutional and hospital care when it is used appropriately. It is a well-documented fact that 1% of the population uses over 25% of the healthcare dollars. And this only includes healthcare dollars, not jails, prisons, homeless shelters, etc. These individuals recycle through emergency rooms, urgent care centers, psychiatric and medical hospitals, and jails and prisons, and are often placed in the same settings in which they routinely have failed. The Lighthouse model is one approach that provides this level of support, which can include assistance with medication, hygiene, transportation to appointments, and other needed skills to help the individual live as independently as possible in the community. The bottom line is there are no long-term facilities available for this population. The Lighthouse model, as used at Mark, meets this need and should be expanded for both clinical and economic reasons.
A residential treatment program costs at least $190 per day per person. A lighthouse costs approximately $140 per day per person. Now, if you have 4 or 5 people living in a group home in a regular residence, and their living there saves 1 hospitalization out of those 5 people per year, that covers the rental assistance.
So I would appeal to you all to understand that people with serious mental illness have a disease like diabetes, which is chronic, and can be controlled with the right conditions and the right medications, but is never actually going to go away.
Alex, just for outpatient, inpatient doctors, not including medicines, not including clothing, not including housing, he's up to $2.7 million. And the majority of that was spent inpatient, which means that the majority of that was state dollars.
Lighthouse homes were created for that segment of the ACMI population that are not ready to live alone because they need additional supports that can only be cost-effectively provided in a group home setting. Tenants have the confidence that their lighthouse property is their home and they will not be evicted and experience destabilizing and traumatizing cycles of homelessness merely because they displayed symptoms of a mental illness. So what is the barrier to expand additional Lighthouse homes? We have or can find the properties, we have the trained staff, we can find the housing support dollars. The real need is that we need to find additional sources of rental subsidies and rental vouchers. The research clearly shows that rental subsidies are an essential and critical part of all permanent supportive housing models. In partnership with Mercy Care, cities, elected officials, advocacy groups, and families, we are working hard to break down the barriers and expand Lighthouse homes. But the fact is, this is a statewide issue, and we need and are seeking the support of the State Housing Department, Access, and the Governor's Office.
I've never seen a program like Mark Community Resources. I look at life now like I'm grateful to be alive. I have actually like a connection with my family that I've never had in my entire life. Like we're on a level now where we just, you know, it's just pure love when I go around my family. It's unbelievable.